Kavita Shah, and the title cut from her recording Visions, with a host of folks like Lionel Luque, Steve Wilson, others working with her, Linda O on the date also, and we have Kavita on the line. Kavita, welcome to WPFW.
Thank you so much, Rusty.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. So this was an earlier recording. We got your latest queued up also. But tell us how you conceived this and how you assembled these great musicians to work with you.
Visions I put together just after graduating from Manhattan School of Music. I did my master's there, and I think I was really thinking about who was at the forefront of understanding and mixing modern jazz aesthetic with elements of world music, and Lionel Luque is really the person that came to mind. So I enlisted him to help produce the album with me and help bring my vision to light. And I think that album was my first musical statement, and it combines many of the influences that I've had in my life, whether from my own Indian culture or from the music that I've studied. I've lived abroad in Brazil and South America. I speak a few different languages, and I've spent time in West Africa. And so just bringing together all those different influences with, of course, my training as a jazz musician, as well as pop influences like Stevie Wonder and Joni Mitchell and so on. So it was, I guess, bringing together all those different elements into my own vision.
Mm-hmm. And where did you grow up?
I grew up in New York City.
Okay.
I grew up in the heart of it, in New York, in Manhattan. So, I'm very much product of the city.
I guess so. Who were the first people that you listened to that drew you to the music?
To jazz specifically?
Sure.
Ella. I was 10 years old when I was introduced to Ella Fitzgerald, and I think that that changed my life. Really early jazz like Ella, Louis Armstrong, Billie Holiday, early swing,
Sure, okay.
Benny Goodman,
wow,
big bands, Sinatra. My family, my dad was a big Sinatra fan. So that's where it started. Of course, it went other directions.
Obviously, yes, yes. So you were right there in Manhattan.
I was
going to the Manhattan School of Music. So, but how did you do the travel that you just alluded to? How'd you work all that out?
So that was somewhere in between. I grew up going to India as a child, where my grandparents lived, and sometime in high school, I got very into Spanish as a second language. I spent a summer living with a family in Ecuador, and then before pursuing music professionally, I studied at Harvard, and I majored in Latin American studies. And during those 4 years, I spent a really good amount of time abroad. So part of that was in Peru, part of that was in South Africa, China, and then I spent 6 months living in Brazil and actually studying Afro-Brazilian musical traditions there and spending time in the community doing research. And that experience really opened me up to this vision of music as possibility for combining culture and politics and community all together. And I thought, I don't want to just be studying this, but I want to be, an actor in it. So
okay.
That's how I decided to become a musician.
Fantastic. We're in the midst of our spring fund drive here at WPFW, and I was wondering if you'd comment a little bit about why a station like this is so important for what you do.
It's incredibly important. The music that happens in the jazz world, it's not the mainstream for sure. And, with streaming and with the way the music industry is going, it's a lot harder for many musicians doing, really interesting, hard work to get our music heard. And it's hard to cut through all the noise sometimes. And I think radio is one of the ways that that still is a democratic platform for music, and especially radio programs such as yours that feature music from all different kinds of jazz musicians, all different subgenres of jazz, what's going on at the cutting edge. It's incredibly important.
Well, thank you. I really am blessed to be able to do this. So let's talk a little bit about what you're going to be doing next Thursday as part of Burnett Thompson's Summer Jazz at Jackson Place. It's the Cater House on Lafayette Square. So
I've been on the road the past few years with my band. After recording Visions, which of course has a very large ensemble, including tablas and kora and everything, I started touring mostly with a quintet ensemble, a more traditional jazz ensemble, bass, piano, drums, guitar. So next week there will be no guitar; it'll just be a quartet, but similar aesthetic. So it kind of comes out of the Visions aesthetic, but there's a whole new repertoire of music. Again, mixing jazz with different world music influences. So you'll hear some of that new repertoire, you'll hear some of the repertoire in Visions, and I'll be playing with 3 great musicians who are from D.C., the D.C. area, Mark Meadows on piano, Elliot Seppa on the bass, and Dante Pope on the drums.
Well, just all fantastic musicians. They really are. So this is really, really exciting. And how will you develop the repertoire in terms of hooking up with these musicians?
They were highly recommended to me by several friends of mine, and we're gonna get together and we'll see what happens. So we'll rehearse, and this is how it is these days. You send each other music, you talk on email, you talk on phone, and somehow the music always happens. And I love the chance to work with new musicians that I haven't worked with before. And also, especially when you're traveling, sometimes it's really nice to be with people that are from the place that you're playing in. It's like another way to get to know the place, and it's another way to bring new perspectives to the music.
And what do you have coming up after this performance? What's next on your agenda?
So I've been on tour for the past year with bassist Francois Mouton. We have a duo project. I think you might be playing some of those tracks later in the program. And we've been on tour pretty nonstop for the past year. I was in Japan earlier this year. And we were in Europe a few months ago. So I'm trying to take the summer a little bit easy and enjoy being home, getting to work on my next album. And I will be doing a composer residency in France at the Camargo Foundation from September to October. So I'm working on this new quintet album and a bunch of other stuff that I have a backlog of since
Fantastic.
I haven't really been home for very long.
Great. Fantastic. Well, the Jazz at Jackson Place always sells out, so you're going to have a full crowd there.
That's what I've been told, but I'm very excited.
For folks, if you want information on this, contact Burnett Thompson at Burnett@pianojazz.com. Burnett, B-U-R-N-E-T-T, Burnett at pianojazz.com, and he'll lay out how you can get tickets for this if they're not sold out already. It usually the whole series usually sells out. Chris Fun is coming up on July 11th, and then in August, Aaron Sieber will be performing. So it's quite a lineup that Burnett has put together, as he has done with other ventures like the piano jazz at the Arts Club and the other things that Burnett's been doing. Well, Kavita, I've got actually interplay queued up from the title cut from the recording. And after I play that, I'm going to play the duet you did with Sheila Jordan. I just want to ask you, I mean, Sheila's just a delightful vocalist. Has she turned 90 yet? She's still singing remarkably.
Yes,
you know?
She is 90.
Yes, and I'm just completely in awe of her.
Me too.
So how did you hook this up?
Well, Sheila is part of the reason why I decided to go into music, and the way we met was I was working. In fact, I did live in D.C. for a few months at the beginning of after college. My first job out of college was working for Human Rights Watch, and I worked in D.C.
Wow,
and then I worked in New York.
Wow!
And it was during this time when I was wondering, how am I going to do the jazz thing, and what am I going to do, and am I going to go into human rights, or am I going to find some way to keep the music alive? And during that time, I was on my way to work at the Empire State Building, and I got into the subway, and it was one of those fortuitous moments where, if I had caught if I had crossed the street a little bit earlier, I would have caught the previous train, but I didn't. And so I walked down the platform to where I usually got on the train, and then when the second train came, the doors opened, and Sheila was literally sitting right in front of me. This happened 10 years ago, about spring 2009. And I knew who she was, of course, and I was a huge fan of hers. And I went up to her and I told her, are you Sheila Jordan? And she was very excited and
great.
To be recognized. And so she took me under her wing, and she's been kind of a guardian angel to me ever since. And she's been that to many, many singers around the world. So part of the joy and the great honor of being a jazz musician is the chance to learn from our elders and to interact with them. And I knew that I wanted to definitely record our relationship in some way or another. And the Bass and Voice project happened independently. Francois had, proposed to me that we do this, and it kind of came out very organically. But obviously, doing Bass and Voice, Sheila was really the pioneer of that.
Absolutely,
gosh. When the project started and when we were going in the studio, it was just natural that we would ask her to join us.
You also had two cuts with Martial Solal on
That's right.
It's I guess that's a whole other story in terms of how that...
That's, Francois has played in Martial's trio for 30 years.
Right.
So it started with Sheila, and then we thought, we have my mentor, we should also have Francois's mentor on there. And he's, like Sheila, just a total joy. He was amazing to work with in the studio, and, it was a dream come true.
Yes. Well, I'm going to actually do Sheila first, Falling in Love with Love, and then I'll do some other cuts. And Interplay, what was your decision to make that the title cut, the Bill Evans composition?
I think you guys will hear it. Interplay, obviously it's the title of Bill Evans' composition. Yeah. But it also describes the interaction between Francois and I. It's not a traditional vocalist accompanist interaction. It's a lot more about being intertwined and intertwining our voices.
Well, we'll do the Sheila Jordan, and then we'll do that. I want to thank you for calling in tonight again. Kavita Shah.
Thank you so much, Rusty, for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Jazz at Jackson Place next Thursday. Summer evenings at Decatur House Museum at Lafayette Square. Contact Burnett Thompson, burnett@pianojazz.com for ticket information on it, or I guess it always sells out. You may show up at the door and not be able to get in. But in any case, Kavita, thanks again. It says we listen to you.
Thank you, Rusty. Okay. I can't wait to come to D.C.
I'm just looking forward to it.